Welcome to Bible Storytime, and thank you for joining us today as we explore one of the most powerful and awe-inspiring events in the Bible, the Fall of Jericho. Found in Joshua 5:13 to 6:27, this story isn't just about ancient warfare. It's a testimony to God's power, His presence, and the miraculous results of faithful obedience. As we walk through this story, let's open our hearts to what God might be saying to us about trust, about worship, and about spiritual battles we may be facing today. The Israelites had just crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. After 40 years of wandering, they were finally ready to claim the land God had promised them. But before them stood Jericho, an ancient fortified city with massive walls and a reputation for invincibility. From a human standpoint, Jericho was unconquerable. But God had a plan, not one of brute strength, but one that required complete trust in Him. As Joshua prepared for battle, he encountered a mysterious man standing with a drawn sword. Joshua asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" The man replied, "Neither, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." This moment is pivotal. Joshua falls face down, realizing he's in the presence of the divine. The commander is likely a theophany, God appearing in human form. Joshua is reminded that the battle ahead isn't really his. It belongs to the Lord. Success won't come through military might, but through obedience to God's command. Now God gives Joshua a strategy, one that defies military logic. Here's the plan. For 6 days, the Israelites were to march once a day around Jericho in silence, with the Ark of the Covenant and 7 priests blowing trumpets. On the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times, and then, at the sound of a long trumpet blast, the people were to shout. That's it. No ladders, no battering rams, just walking, trumpets, and shouting. Why? Because this battle would showcase God's power, not man's. Joshua stood near Jericho, likely deep in thought, preparing for the first great challenge in the Promised Land. Suddenly, he looked up and saw a man standing before him, sword drawn. Realizing he was in the presence of someone divine, Joshua fell face down in reverence. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy," and Joshua obeyed. Before the battle began, Joshua had to recognize this was not his fight, it was God's. Now Jericho was tightly shut up. No one came in or out. But the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing trumpets. When you hear them give a long blast, have all the people shout. The wall of the city will collapse, and you will go straight in." Imagine hearing those instructions. No battering rams, no siege towers, no weapons. Just marching, trumpets, and shouting. But Joshua didn't question. He simply obeyed. Each day for 6 days, the people rose early. The priests carried the Ark of the Covenant. Trumpets blew, soldiers marched. But not a word was spoken by the people. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. And on the 7th lap, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." And as the people shouted, the walls of Jericho fell flat. God had done what no army could have done alone. Victory through obedience. Joshua had not forgotten the promise made to Rahab, the woman who hid the Israelite spies. She and her family were rescued before the city was destroyed. Even in the midst of judgment, God showed mercy. The city was put under a ban. It was to be dedicated to the Lord. Gold, silver, bronze, and iron were taken into the Lord's treasury. Everything else was destroyed. Jericho was the first fruits of the conquest. God was claiming it entirely for Himself. And Joshua pronounced a curse. "Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest, he will set up its gates." The fall of Jericho reminds us that God is not limited by human strategies. His plans often seem unconventional, but they are perfect. Here are 3 key takeaways for us today. God fights for us. The battle belongs to Him. Our part is to trust and follow. Obedience opens the door to miracles. The people didn't understand the plan, but they followed it in faith. Faith must walk before it speaks. For 6 days, the people walked in silence. Sometimes our greatest statement of faith is quiet, steady obedience. Are there walls in your life right now? Barriers that seem unbreakable? Maybe it's a situation, a sin, a fear, or a relationship. Let this story be a reminder. God can bring them down, but He often does so when we trust Him enough to march forward in faith, even when the instructions seem strange. Thanks for watching. If this message about the Fall of Jericho inspired you, don't forget to like the video to support the channel, to subscribe so you don't miss future content. Share this with a friend who needs encouragement today. And remember, walls still fall when we walk in faith. See you next time.